G'day and welcome to the chapter where we rebuild our Carter Thermoquad. Now we've done one video where we sort of had all the parts cleaned, they were hydroblasted, and sort of did a bit of a mock reassembly of a throttle body. Anyway, we have a Carter Thermoquad here. This is the small. There's two main types. There's lots of different release numbers and all that sort of thing on them. But there's two main types. This is an 800 CFM one. Some Australian people reckon they're rated at 600 CFM. The American carburettor, and they say 800, so that's what it is in my book. And there are two main types, and of course the main difference between the two are the size of the primaries. On the 850, which is the bigger of the two, they have a larger primary. Both have the same size secondary. Now the larger carburetors are on the 440 Chrysler, stuff like that. These were on mainly Chrysler products in the United States. Here in Australia they're on Fords between 1976 and 1984. Now, they're enormous, and we had them on 302 engines and 351s as well, which 351s I wouldn't be surprised with. Chrysler used them on 340s, but 302s you would think they'd be a little bit too big, but what they have to counter that, when you open up those huge secondaries, of course you lose all your airspeed. They also have this damper here, and what that does is it removes the sort of shock of opening the secondaries and losing all the air. And of course, once vacuum's allowed to start commencing, this door opens up and there's two secondary spray bars in there. And of course, then it starts drawing fuel. When I'm talking about secondary spray bars, I'm talking about these little guys here. They come up from the secondary jets and release fuel into the charge via those holes once that door starts opening. And that door, oh gosh, that door is aerodynamically set up so a nice drawing effect can happen when they start to release fuel, or to cause them to release fuel. So that's the reason they can get away with putting these on a smaller capacity engine. Now they've got an electric and manifold preheated choke. So you've got your electric terminal here off the back of the alternator. This one goes down to exhaust manifold and of course draws air in here. So that goes down to the manifold, comes back, goes through here. And of course we have a nice big heated choke then. Lots of different ports for EGR, PCV, distributor, all this sort of business here. And we also have a system of levers and weights. So for example with choke on, this little weight here stops the secondaries opening. They won't open with that down. Of course, once the fast idle weight, which is this huge screw here, drops down, that pushes that lever down, catches, and we have ourselves some secondaries. Now, many of the adjustments on these are achieved by bending rods, if you read in the manual. Now, it's not just the bending or the slight bending of rods that pertains to carburetor adjustment. There's also a series of screw adjustments as well. This one's for the air door, and this one's a bit stuck. Of course, the base idle, the kick down, the mixtures, there's a whole raft of adjustments on it that aren't just to do with bending rods, but that combined with bending rods is the ultimate way of getting the correct adjustment. Now, another feature of the Thermoquad, of course, is this plastic body, which is phenolic resin. Now, the idea behind that is to keep the fuel up to 20 degrees Fahrenheit cooler, thereby make it more efficient. And it looks like this. This one's actually got, gee whiz. This one's actually got one of the primary jet wells that's come off. They can be readhered somehow. They sort of go in like that. And of course, the primary jets sit in the bottom there, and that's where your metering rods come through. There's a little bit of room for the rods, but not just that, they transfer fuel from the jet up into here, which goes up via a seal to the air horn. Now, people say, a lot of people are really cranky on these carburetors for the fact that these things are known for warping. Now, there could be a little bit of warping due to carburetor fires and that sort of thing, but it's easy to correct that by just having a flat surface with a bit of wet and dry and sort of sanding it down. And of course, you can check how level the integrity of it by running a straight edge across it diagonally and also in a parallel way as well. And they also have for emissions, a vent on the side, which is this little guy here. So fuel bowl vapours go through this tube here into your charcoal canister. So it's a sealed carburettor. But they also have metering rods, and this is really stiff, and we have 2 metering rods going down into the primary jets. Of course, that is vacuum operated. That should operate nice and freely, and it doesn't because it's all bound up. This is one that some gentleman media blasted, so it's obviously grit and whatnot in there. So if we look at our throttle plate, there's a cam mounted here. Of course, when you open your primaries, that cam moves. There's a lever sitting on a pin in here that goes up and down when you open it, which of course pushes this tree up and down. Metering rods attached to either side, here and here, open up the secondary jets. Now, the metering rods are replaceable with non-standard ones or different ones. This tree is also adjustable, so the length of that can be rotated to give a different length, so it will open earlier or later if you desire. The other thing with this, that cam provides a primary boost, the rest of it's vacuum controlled. So it works under vacuum, but that initial push from that cam is mechanical. When we talk about metering rods, we're talking about these little tapered brass rods here, and of course the purpose behind that, if you get your primary jet, it's got a hole in it of course, and the metering rods fit inside them. And the lower they are, the less fuel can come out. So of course they raise them down to this tapered area here, which of course allows more fuel in. So that's the reason that they're there. Now there are 2 types of floats in the Thermoquad. This is a nitrofill one, a sort of a plasticky, condensed plasticky sort of stuff. I don't know, nitrofill they call it. Float level can be adjusted by bending that tang, or by running a set of pliers where those holes are, where this hole is here, and bending it gently. Now, these are a different shape from the brass ones. The brass ones are much more pronounced in that sort of reveal in that area there. So we need to make sure we get that the right way around. Now there's another YouTube user, Rocky's Roadshow I think, that's really gone into detail over quite a few chapters on how these things are reconditioned and how they work. And it's well worth giving that a view. I think Rocky's a carburettor specialist, so he's more in tune with the intricacies of these carburettors. So whenever you take on a job like this, you do it by the manual. And I've got a manual here. It's an XD manual, which has got all the Thermoquad paraphernalia lifted straight out of the XC one, which is probably lifted straight out of some American Chrysler manual. Very important to blow everything out with compressed air. Make sure it is absolutely clean. As I said in the last video, this is hydroblasted, so it's very, very clean. Another thing to be careful of when you're blowing these sorts of things out are things like this. That's a little foot valve, and it sits right in here, and it's a little foot valve for the nozzles so that your fuel doesn't wind up back in the accelerator pump over here. Of course, there's a little hose that goes between these two here, the housing, and also where the nozzles are, and that little foot valve sitting in there will prevent leak back, so you've always got fuel available to come out. Now it's very easy to forget things like that, and this one didn't come out even with compressed air in there. I had to dislodge it with a very fine screwdriver, and then it of course dropped out, or it blew out. So we need to be careful of things like that. So unless you're familiar with these, you need to follow the instructions to a T. And you'll get your kit and it'll have lots of little O-rings and bits and pieces, and that will look something like this. A little bag full of tricks, and you need to understand exactly what they do. Now, there are 2 funny looking O-rings there. They've almost got ribs in them, and they're crucial, and I'll show you where they go. They actually drop in to these areas here, there and there, and seal off the bottom of these areas, because without those, they don't seal, this thing doesn't work. So there's loads and loads of little odds and ends like that, which you need to be aware of. I spoke to a Thermoquad guru, and he said something very unusual. He told me that 302s used a bigger secondary metering jet than what 351s did. I have 3 Thermoquads, 2 302 ones and a 351 one. And true to his word, the 351 carburettor had smaller secondary metering jets. Now in the book, under each revision of the Thermoquad, if you like, we've got 351 automatic and manual here, and 4.9 or 302 and so forth. Each chart that sort of refers to an engine transmission combination has a note on it that says to meet ADR 27A requirements, this carburettor is produced and certified to a flow curve and not to any particular jet metering size. Therefore, no metering components are to be changed unless the carburettor can be matched to the original flow curve. So by writing that, it could be probable that they reduced the size of the secondary metering jet in the 5.8 engine to meet emissions, whereas the 302 probably got away with it. And also, it's foreseeable that reducing the secondary metering jet in the 302 could have enhanced the sort of bog down effect, if you like. So maybe that's the reason why the 302s I've disassembled, and the jet I spoke to had noticed that the 351 had smaller secondary jets than the 302. Now when we talk about ADR 27A, that's July 1976, when EGR, exhaust gas recirculation, was mandated on our cars. And so of course what went with that was the retarded valve timing, exhaust gas recirculation, less efficiency, and of course that was the reason that they put the Thermoquad on the cars, so you had some nice big secondaries to give you some power back, because they did lose quite a lot. And so before we assemble anything, we have to ascertain which jets we're going to use. Now 4 of these are the same size, the primary ones, 2 different sets of metering rods, 2 different sets of secondary metering jets. So I'm going to use the larger ones in this car and a set of primary ones. Now these floats are brass. The brass floats are the earlier type. The nitrofill, the sort of plastic compoundy ones, are they're the later ones, yeah. And apparently the nitrofill ones aren't suitable for gas. I didn't think Thermoquads were very good with gas anyway. I thought Rochester quadrajets are the way to go with that. But you live and learn. That spring, incidentally, is wider at the bottom, so it goes in there and of course sits underneath the plunger like that. So we'll put that in. Before I forget, not a bad idea when you're cleaning these things up to use some very fine drill bits like that, just to clean out inside that nozzle if it's been corroded like this was, and also inside there as well, because we don't want fuel to block. So we'll get our spring, our accelerator pump, drop it in, and then we can knock on this cap. I want a taller socket than that. Put it there. So I start doing the delicate stuff. There we go. Probably shouldn't have done that with this stuff bouncing around, but she'll be right. There we go. Fuel pump. Accelerator pump. Very nice. Pull that old rubber out. Put the new one in. Sort of twist these in. Just as long as that sort of triangulated part's protruding through the top. And that'll do fine to seal up there. And that just sort of sits in there. So we've got, in order to get this in, this is quite tricky. Whoops, we've got a new rubber to seal against the carburetor body. Spring loaded with this bracket, which is sort of square driven through there into there, and that's where it pivots from, with the spring going through there and then everything being retained by that clip, and that clip runs in that groove. So it's quite tricky to get in. Now I'm going to push that through. There we go. Like that. Now, where does that clip go? This little guy here has to retain it all so it doesn't come out. And that goes in there. Just like that. Okay. That is rather good. Look at that. Woohoo! I've only got 2 of these. They're these sort of vent stacks that sort of sit in here, and they're all damaged. I only got 1 set because the others were lost. I'm sort of using the screwdriver as a mandrel and driving them down to try and get them around there and sort of straighten them out. So yeah, they don't look great, but they'll have to do. I haven't got any other replacements. There we go. I don't like that, but there's not much I can do about it. So where to now? This is the air door. And it's got obviously a lever there, but also it's got a little cutout there that a spring sits in that you set up the pre-tension. So I'm just going to slot that in. Now this is the little spring for the air door. Now I didn't get this plated, it's not worth it. Any sort of tension could be harmful for it, so it sits in this little groove. Sort of sits on the shaft version like that. And the shaft goes in there and it sort of twists. There's a sort of a rotational tension. So I'm just going to plonk that in. That just goes straight in until it marries up with that spring. And there it is there. Cool. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that there and put this locking ring in, and that'll stop it from moving around. And I'll put the air door on. So we use a nice broad screwdriver for that. Just stick it in and rotate it. That way it just locks against that screw head. So once you've made your adjustment, you can't move it. So I'm just going to start that. And they're stiff threads, so they shouldn't need a lock tight or anything. And that, when it opens, that sort of shows the drawing effect on the secondary spray bars. So you're going to get a big sort of vacuum in there. So, and there's an adjustment we do in that we turn this tight seat thing go another quarter turn. So I'm just going to create a little bit more drag there, just so it stays where I want it to. So it's stopped. So we'll go a half, 1, a quarter, and then we tighten this up. And it should be the right tension. Cool. The one thing I neglected to do is put an S-link in there. The instructions recommend putting the S-link in there before you tap that check valve thing on, but I've already done it, so it's a little bit too late for that. We've got this new foot valve I was talking about before, which just drops into that hole. Just like that. And a gasket just drops over that hole. There's 2 holes. Don't get it mixed up with the compensator one. And then of course I've got the nozzle, and that's just secured with 1 screw, which is a large slotted one, so that can just sit over there. And then get held in place. And there are little squirters. So that's all done. So just make sure if you get these plated, they block these off. This was full of electroplating liquid. You can see all the remnants of it on the ground. And it seems to be working quite well now. So I can just sort of put that back on there. And that one's alright. Slower to operate, but we'll just get some bolts and we'll chuck them in. It's just easy getting these in now than later. Yeah. I don't think that'll fit on now. I don't think, yeah, that's not going to go. So we've got to plug that back on. Like that. So the instructions are saying all the way in and back out 1.5. Half, 1, 1.5. Just going to put a tiny bit of grease on there. I've got two of these cams, these levers that run off that cam. One of them has a mark on there. This one's clean, so I'm going to use this one. I might just wipe that with a bit of Scotch-Brite first. So a little pin, and then that sits in. It raises, and that's what pushes that metering rod tree up and down. So that's cool. That is cool. So there's a gasket. It goes over the hill. Like that. And then our body sits on top. Can I go either way? I just want to double check that that's symmetrical, which it is. So even if you put it that way, it's exactly the same. So we'll put that down, and then this little guy goes on top. Like that. So we'll bang some jets in, a couple of baffles, and that should be that bit done. A couple of things to make note of these springs. There's three different types of coil springs. Well, there's a few more different types, but three main types look quite similar. There's this one which has got the least amount of windings, and they're used for the fast idle counterweight type adjustment there. That's a mixture screw. And there's also these ones that are sort of bound tighter at the edges than in the center, and they're used for the manual idle adjustment screw, which is this one here. There's this one here as well, which uses a similar one, and that's for your kickdown, and that goes sort of in that way. Now this car's a manual, so the kickdown is defunct, but just keep an eye on things like that, and don't forget also, we've got a little baffle here. There's two baffles that go into the phenolic resin body. One is this one here, and we have this little guy that goes this way, goes in there, something like that. And it's always a good idea just to grab a rule and just run across the top. Just make sure you're not catching anything. That's catching there, not down far enough. So it should be dead flat, and that way you know your gasket's going to seal. That one just seems a little bit up. I need to look at that. Maybe if I turn it around. It just doesn't seem quite right. But these sorts of checks will save heartache later on. That's it. Yep. It seems to sort of going one way better than the other. So just watch things like that. I'm going to put these new needles and seats in, and that's the receptacle for the needle. Of course, it comes with a small fibre washer. I'm just going to put a tiny bit of, just a little dab of grease, just to hold that there, wipe off the excess. And that'll hold the washer there while we put, there's a baby next door, while we put that in. So, camera's in the way, but we'll get our needle out. And through its seals on that sort of conical part there, drop it in. Now as far as floats are concerned, these are the two main types. We've got the brass ones here, we've got the nitrophil. Completely different shape. There's a reveal in the bottom of that, which I'm assuming by the time you put it on, makes room for the gasket. This one seems to fit this way. If you look at the angle of the tang there, that comes in from the top, I've got these ones fitted the same way. Now, to fit these, the easiest way is to knock the pin in from the side. It's quoted by Rocky to do it from the other side, but I find it easier to lift the gasket, because if you try and put in with the gasket there, it interferes with the gasket. You can't actually get it in, and I found it difficult from this side too. Well, that does seem to be a bit better, so maybe we'll do it his way. But really, these ones don't have the holes for bending the same as what these do. They're completely different. They're narrower, and so on and so forth. Now to put this in this way, which actually looks the correct way, because that float, that reveal, if you like, clears the gasket quite well. The problem is then, this seems to be on the wrong angle. So it's a really, really tricky thing. Yeah, no, that's completely wrong. It can't possibly go that way. It has to go this way. So in order to fit the float, we place it in. To get the pin in this side, it's like a nail head type, you would need to lift the gasket and put it in. With the gasket in place, it won't clear. It'll chafe up the gasket and so forth, but you can put it in from the back side. Oh yeah, it is tight. I reckon the gasket's in the way. We'll try it this way. which apparently is incorrect. And we can clear it straight away. Gee, it's warm in here today. Clear it straight away and get in there, son. There we go. And then that will go down there in the body. Of course, will hold that in. And of course, we need to check the height off the gasket. So we're looking for 23 mil, and we have that rested 24. So we can knock that down a bit by bending it, but that's the best way of tackling that. But all things considered, this is now ready to be put onto the body. I won't tighten it down too tightly, just in case I do have to rip it off again and start playing around, because I don't want the gaskets to bed in too hard. So we're ready to put, I haven't got the linkages on, I haven't got measuring rods in or anything like that, or the little tree for it. I want to put that in later. We've got all this ready. We've got our baffles in here. We've checked that they're all flush. We've checked that this is level. We've got our primary jets in there. We've just got to put these O-rings down here, and they're one of the most important things. So I'm just going to get a scriber and just make sure that there's no remnants of the old ones there, because we don't want to sort of stack one on top of the other. So there's nothing in there. We have to put our O-rings there and here. And they're those funny square cut ones. Which are the really special ones. You can use O-rings, but they'll last about an hour and a half before they start leaking, apparently. And they're these little guys. Oh, hang on, we've got a clip in there. I've got to get rid of that clip. Sort of neatly placed itself around one of the inside one of the O-rings. Let's put that there. These little guys here. And you can see they're sort of ribbed all the way around. They're sort of an X shape. So we put them down. So they're there. Very important we don't forget those. So now I've got it straight, and we can put the top on. And we'll lower it ever so slowly. And before we do anything up, we just give it a visual to make sure it's all seated down properly. As we tighten this down, it's going to compress those O-rings we just put in. There you go, that's good. Right, so I'm just going to leave that like that, because I've had these plated. Now when these are new, they came out as sort of a black colour, but because these are plated, I've had trouble with getting these out of these base plates, if you know what I mean, because they all screw down to the base plates. I've actually had a top ruin because of that. I'm just going to put a bit of anti-seize on. I'm just using a Sparky screwdriver. I'm just going to touch these down, and I'm just going to go diagonally. And I'm not going tight at all. I've already forgotten something. See? Just watch that sort of thing. So I'll take that, it's easy just to take that off and reposition it. Just go around. And just lower it gradually. If you're in a hurry, don't do a job like this. So just give it a bit quick visual. That's all opening. I can hear both floats moving. That's really important. We don't want those things stuck. Also, I didn't have these plated. I used it the way it was, and you can see here the secondaries are opening under there. The idea of the hot idle, or the fast idle, is weight at the front. That pulls down, this thing should fall down. That linkage there should fall down under its own weight, so that when it's on choke, they can't open. That's how it's supposed to work. Now, because I've painted this, that's not as loose as what it should be. So perhaps the best thing to do there, a tiny bit of CRC, and work it so it can fall under its own weight. It's nearly there, doesn't need much, but it should be able to fall under its own weight. Now, another thing that the kit came with, aside from its instructions, came with a big thick gasket for the hot idle compensator, which goes here. It's this little tricky looking bimetal thing. and they make it very clear not to put that on until all carburetor adjustments have been made. So we can put that to the side for a moment and continue with linkages and all that sort of stuff. Right, so when you go to put these linkages on, there's a myriad of them. There's one there, I've already put that one on there. And there's a whole lot of other ones, and some of them are quite similar and they're different shapes. Some of them are quite similar, I should say, but are different shapes. So getting them in the right order and all this sort of stuff, particularly with this sort of thing, I've put that together wrong, can be quite challenging. Now you do get an exploded diagram with the kit that goes into all where everything sort of fits and how it all goes. But that's not much use for the linkages. Now, the Ford Workshop Manual is the best way to go. And it has a lot of illustrations, sort of like this sort of thing, which shows you the exact shape and where everything goes. If you can see over here. Oops. Now, some of these will require slight bending and fettling to get clearances right. So, I mean, all of the adjustments are in these manuals. Now, this is an XD one. And these are a lot cheaper than XC ones for some unknown reason. I don't know why yet. I had an XC one and gave it away and regret it now. But these need to be in the right order. And, you know, some are recognisable straight off the bat. That's the choke flap. I'm not putting the choke flap on. I'm not putting the choke flap on until I've got the metering rods in. And then that can go on. And some are for the choke. There's one with a large radius around it somewhere. That's a choke one there. So there's all sorts of linkages and so forth that go on. The other thing, of course, is this metering rod tree. Now these, I clean this up with Scotch-Brite. These move in and out with vacuum, but they're also kicked up by that cam on the primary shaft. So these should be really, really free to move in there. Now, of course, they have a spring down the bottom. It's a fine wound spring, which will allow it, has to be really, really free in its movement. So I'm using, because I'm paranoid, I don't even know where I put it now, my Loctite, there it is, and it's a fine machine screw. Now, it's the only one in the carburetor that size. There's plenty of other slotted screws that are used in here. I'm sort of not doing this too well. I've left my screwdriver over there too, I think. I'm just going to put a tiny bit on. And I've done this to, crap, I can't get near. I've done this to the other screws, except these. These are all anti-seize, but these ones that have a tendency or can at least come loose and fall in, which again is very unlikely. Crap, that's blocked. I'll put a bit of Loctite on. Right, and that's held in with this little guy here. It's got a male bit on it that goes into there. And then we plonk our screw in, which is much easier said than done. So when we set this up, we'll have it so the choke's open, because I want to start the engine with the holly, warm it up, turn the fuel off, drain the holly out, and then put this on. So at least the engine's warm and I can get it going, and then I'll set up the cold once that's done. Alright, so in here we have one more little O-ring, which is that little bloke there. Can I see that? Yes. And I'm tipping that's for the choke housing. In there. It sort of fits in very snugly, just like that. So before we do that though, we've got to put these little actuators on. Of course, one goes at the back, and that's stiff, it's raspy, so I'm going to Scotch-Brite that, clean out in there so it's nice and free for the choke. It's sort of like doing a model kit, this. You sort of, actually, which one is it? You're pulling bits off to assemble it, and those ones, and you're sort of taking them off. I left them on the wires after I played it. Right, so here's that choke housing. I've freed that up, that's nice and good. I've got an O-ring there, and I've also put some anti-seize on that thread. If you remember, these are the horrible little guys that strip, and they're really, really hard to get out sometimes. And so I'm just going to putting it in and watching that O-ring doesn't drop out. You could probably put a spot of grease on that if you wanted to, but we're going in quite well, so that's all good. Now you can, if you do have trouble with that, you can access this one a lot more easily. So if you get that out, you can sort of work this and start rotating it a bit, sort of to and fro, to free up that one in there if you do have trouble with them. I've not yet had to destroy a choke housing on account of that, but if you know, push came to shove, you might find yourself in that position where you have to cut it off. That was really stupid. Hang on. Okie dokie. Here's the coil that goes over the top, and of course not a bad idea to get some Scotch-Brite and really clean in there on both sides, because that's where this ring goes that earths it against the carburetor body so you can have a contact. So of course, in order to do this properly now, we need to put our little disc in, our heat disc, which looks like it's got a slight warp in it. That might be, I've got another one of those. This is better, this one hasn't got a warp in it. And that will sit with the small hole above that little hole. If you see what I mean, there's a little hole there, that's where your hot air comes in, enter through there. And of course the purpose of this is so you don't burn the crap out of the coil. Okay, so we're all good. We can put that down, it's our gasket, brand new she was. And I'm tipping, this goes that way. I'm just going to put this on haphazardly at the moment because I don't want to set the choker yet. I just want it to sort of sit there for now. Putting these little SIRS on is quite difficult by yourself when you're trying to balance the rest of this stuff. So I've just sort of put a screw in each one, left the SIRS out, and then I'll go around one at a time, put them in once I get this one started. I'm just putting these in, and I'll check adjustments, and I'll drop clips. I'll check adjustments and refit them if I need to. And I've got my lovely model. I can look in the manual as I said before, but yeah, can't be bothered. So, yeah, that one's going to be a bastard to put behind. Oh, it's the accelerator pump, that one. So we even have to make sure we're clean all inside here. This is the fuel intake, and the kit came with a new gasket, the proper graphite type gasket that just sort of screws in there. Now I've got a normal, everyday tapered gas thread type brass union on there because I'm not going to use the original type of filter. That's what they had. If you want Concord, you'd use one of these. Some people even drill them out, so they're an empty can, but it still looks like they're there. I like the Ryco ones. They're sort of cheap, they're modern, they're better. I think they're better. Not really sure. And they're easily replaced. And, you know, so I'm using one of those before the fuel pump, but I am going out of stock and just using that brass union because I reckon that's the way to go. At least for me it is anyway. And just put the metering rods in. You have to make sure it's all nice and free. Now, if this tree, this sort of tree thing which holds the metering rods, if it's been bent or misshapen at all, it'll stay there and won't come up. And so you've got to make sure it's directly in line with the holes where the metering rods come out. So it's worth keeping an eye on that. So just put these little covers on here. These are horrendous little screws. I've actually lost some, or some have been lost in the process of plating, which was dumb getting them plated anyway. So here we have our fully dressed Carter Thermoquad. I think that's the wrong tag. I might have the wrong number on it, but it looks good. Also, this car's manual, so we don't need this business here. I just put it there for demonstration, I guess. That can come out, that spring can come off. That's just for the kickdown itself. We do have to still free that linkage. It is free, but it's not falling quite as well as I'd like, so I need to work on that. And of course the adjustments need to be done, and that's the reason I haven't put the hot idle compensator on. That is here. There's its gasket, it's nice and thick, and of course there's the compensator itself. So in the next chapter what we'll do is put it on the car and we'll start adjusting it, or I'll bench adjust it first and then we'll put it on the engine and start doing all the adjustments. Found this thing here, That's the vent tube, which is a sort of a trumpety type thing. It's a tapered piece of rubber. And I've got, that might have to be turned down a little bit, but that just sits over there with a little wee clamp, and it goes into a rigid plastic line off to the charcoal canister. Otherwise, all is good. All is very good. So there it is. It's beautiful and clean. We just hope it works as well as it looks. And until next time, as I always say, drive safely, enjoy your classic, and I'll see you later. Ta-da.